Thank her for the question. I want to thank her for being my colleague, but more important than even being my friend, she is a spiritual sister of mine, and was very kind to me when I was telling her that I was going to do this, and gave me so much encouragement and prayer, and I just love you, and I'm grateful. And you read a litany of things. I had a whole section, a whole binder that my staff told me to skip and go to this one, about all the things, going in deep and depth to all the things the Trump administration is doing to make housing more unaffordable, more inaccessible, more expensive, more discrimination in housing, which we know is still a problem, more challenges, more pain heaped upon rural areas, and more complications and problems for building affordable housing in all areas. It is so frustrating to me that this is a problem. We cannot lay the crisis of housing at one administration in the United States. We need to have bold visions and ideas to address this. I am so excited about this next generation of Americans that are rising up with bold visions. I want to give a shout out to Ezra Klein. His book is a must-read, Abundance. This is a vision of doing great things again, of building housing, of redeeming the American dream. But to have a president that is dead set on, for the next 4 years, to do the kind of things that you made a litany of, and now tomorrow is going to bring tariffs that are going to raise the price even more of housing, is outrageous. Where are his promises to make this country more affordable and more accessible? And you heard the data that I read about, we have so many millions of Americans, close to the majority of renters now spend more than a third of their income on rent, which is a very definition our government has of housing insecurity.
We now will have a vote on it. And
substance of the
doing to the American dream, and that there's no bold ideas coming from this administration to help. In fact, they're hurting. They're hurting. So thank you very much to my colleague. Thank you for giving me strength as you did in prayer. And I just thank you for the question that should anger people, that should inspire people, that should activate people, that should engage people, that should demand from us that we take our country away from those who want to do so much harm. I want to start by reading until someone, I know the prayer. I'm going to keep going. I want to talk about environmental protections and how this country is becoming less safe for people with emphysema or with asthma, because Donald Trump is rolling back common sense environmental protections, threatening our children's future and hurting our nation's economy. Energy costs in America are continuing to rise, making it harder and harder for working families to pay their bills. And at a time that we should be investing in clean energy, this administration is canceling projects that would create more jobs for Americans and lower energy prices. He claims he supports an all-of-the-above strategy, but that's clearly not what we're seeing. And there's too much silence about it. All Americans, regardless of where you're born, we deserve safe drinking water, clean air, and an equal opportunity for a healthy and fulfilling life. President Trump promised America the cleanest air and the cleanest water, but on entering office, he immediately instructed the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to cut a long list of common sense environmental protections. This administration is rolling back efforts to reduce emissions from power plants. He's letting polluters pollute our air more. That affects the health of Americans. It drives up aggravating the rates of asthma and emphysema, weakening rules that keep our rivers and our water systems clean as well.
Pursuant to the order of February 29, 1960, the hour of 12 noon having arrived, the Senate having been in continuous session since yesterday, the Senate will suspend for a prayer by the Senate chaplain.
Let us pray. Lord of hosts, you have done great things for us, filling our hearts with determination to do your will. You protect us from unseen dangers, supply us with wisdom, and direct our steps. Today, we are grateful for the efforts of the floor staff, the Capitol Police, the stenographers, the pages, and all those who have worked through the night. We pray you give them the strength they need for this day. Today, give our senators the assurance of your presence. Inspire them with a calm faith, a steady peace, and a firm resolve to do your will. Let no weapon formed against them prosper. We pray in your omnipotent name. Amen.
I'm going to continue.
The senator from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to continue until one of my colleagues asks me a question.
Senator, yield for a question?
One of my heroes in the Senate, a living legend, my partner on some bills that I'm so passionate about expanding IVF, someone that is just freaking awesome. I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Thank you, Senator Booker, for taking this important stand and for doing so much to make it clear how much pain Donald Trump and Elon Musk are inflicting on the American people in every sector of our society. I'm going to be asking you a question about what you've heard from agricultural businesses in your state about the damage that this administration is doing and the jobs that either have been or will be lost as a result. But I thought I would give you some background on what I'm hearing as well. I want to focus this body's attention on our nation's farmers and ranchers who seem to be getting punched day after day, week after week by the Trump-Musk oligarchy. Whether it's their harmful tariffs that hurt our soy and corn farmers, canceling and freezing more than $1 billion in funding for schools and food banks to purchase food from local farmers, or halting reimbursement and contract payments that our farmers are already owed, the senator from New Jersey and I are both working together to undo some of the most harmful impacts of these disastrous decisions, including joining forces to push his Honor Farmer Contracts Act forward. We're also starting to hear reports from farmers about just how damaging the Musk-Trump dismantling of USAID is. Jobs and businesses right here in America. For example, I don't know if the senator has heard, but in North Carolina, they had $2.2 billion in USAID awards, including for 27 large-scale farmers who were fulfilling orders for humanitarian food assistance, and 4 universities who were receiving agricultural research funding. More than 300 North Carolina workers have lost their jobs as a result of this freeze. In Georgia, they had over $389 million in USAID awards, including 9 large-scale farmers fulfilling orders for humanitarian food assistance and 6 universities receiving agricultural research funding. Arkansas had over $210 million in USAID awards, including purchases of rice, grain, and beans from our farmers. Florida has lost $91 million in USAID awards, including $38 million to the University of Florida to improve livestock productivity and food security in developing countries. Texas lost over $48 million in USAID awards, including 9 large-scale farmers fulfilling orders for humanitarian food assistance and 8 universities receiving agricultural research funding. The list goes on and on. My neighbors in Iowa over time now have lost over $4 million in USDA food commodity sales. They have gained they had a total of over $149 million in purchases through USDA and other programs for USAID. Illinois has lost $245 million in aid in farm income that would go towards USAID and aid programs. I think that our farmers have been hit with body blow after body blow from this administration, an administration that in their first term and even in the second term promised that they would look out for America. But I have to say to my friend from New Jersey, I don't think that this administration has lived up to their promises to farmers. Remember that a nation that cannot feed itself, if we lose those family farms, if we lose our ag sector, we cannot lead the free world. We cannot feed ourselves. And frankly, farmers have been hit over and over again. These incoming tariffs are going to be disastrous for our farmers. I was just in South Central and Southern Illinois, just across the Mississippi River from Missouri, talking to our farmers in St. Clair County, Illinois. And you know what they tell me? They tell me that the tariffs are going to affect their products being sold overseas. Our top products in Illinois: corn, soybean, pork. We're also the largest grower of pumpkins. So if you get that Libby can of pumpkins at Halloween time and Christmas time and Thanksgiving, that's thanks to Illinois. If you ever want to come, I'll just take you out to the pumpkin fields. So it's the best pumpkins in the country. But frankly, they are being hurt over and over and over again. And so they're going to see the prices on their commodities affected. They can't sell their products overseas to the top countries that purchase their products. At the same time, their inputs, the fertilizer, the equipment that they need will be more expensive. The tariffs against Canada in terms of steel and aluminum is affecting John Deere. John Deere, hundreds of years old, an American company founded in the heartland of this great nation, is laying off people. And so we have to do better by our farmers. And our farmers have been betrayed time and time again by this Trump administration. They promise big things, but then they come in and by cutting programs like USAID, they are hurting our farmers, their bottom line. I sat down and I met with farmers who were 7th generation, 8th generation watching the teenage son of the farmer, and they're afraid that they're not going to have a farm there anymore. Their products, their margins are so tiny that they don't think they're going to make it. So my question to my colleague from New Jersey is, what are you hearing from farmers, and why do you think this administration is taking so many actions that hurt them and hurt American jobs?
I love my colleague. I love how she's been standing up quite figuratively time and time again on issues. She's really inspired me. I've told folks that on social media I have been celebrating, elevating, liking her content.
Thank you.
She is truly fierce and is a voice that gives me strength. And today she's asking me about one of my favorite subjects. A lot of people were surprised. My staff knows this story well, that I'm on the Ag Committee. And when one of my staffers, the guy sitting over here, Adam Zipkin, who's been with me since 1998, came to me and said, "You should go on the Farm Committee. This is going to get me in trouble," I laughed at him. I had committees I loved. And what's that old saying? At first, they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then they finally accept it. He told me all the issues I care about intersect with our farm and food system, that our farmers are such vital parts of America. They need more people standing up and fighting for them, because the American farmers are getting screwed. We're losing thousands of farms in this country. Family farmers are going belly up. The math doesn't work for them. And this president, as you've pointed out, oh gosh, President Trump is causing an unprecedented amount of chaos, instability, and harm for farmers. Farmers already deal with so much uncertainty from prices, weather, pests, and more. They should not have to deal with uncertainty that our government won't follow through, as you said, on contracts. On contracts. I've had farmers from New Jersey to Texas coming to my office about this president freezing contracts that we approved in a bipartisan manner, putting them in financial crisis. One of the first things that Trump and Musk did is freeze thousands of contracts and agreements that have been already made with our farmers. Farmers applied to grant programs and were selected on their merits. They made legally binding contracts, yet starting in late January, farmers found themselves not getting reimbursed, sometimes reading in the news that a particular grant was frozen, or sometimes no information at all, other than that they were not getting their payments processed. I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Thank you. I think the issue of contracts is especially important because so much of these cuts are claimed to be to cut waste in government spending. But we have a law in the books that says that if we don't make payments according to existing contracts, then we have to pay the interest on those payments that we are late in providing. And so if we, for example, cut $2 billion in or freeze funding payment on $2 billion in contracts as we did with USAID, that means that we're going to have to pay, say, 2% interest rate, $60 million in interest. I don't see where that is a savings for taxpayers. That is a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think that is something that we should be talking about. And I also think that, as you were mentioning, the issue with our farmers, they are important to our national security. The SNAP program is a good example of it. That program was instituted after World War II. We had the very famous example of Audie Murphy, who was the most highly decorated soldier coming out of World War II. He could not pass the initial test to enlist in into the Army during World War II because he didn't weigh enough due to malnutrition post the Great Depression. And so we created the SNAP program to make sure that America's young people were fed, were no longer malnourished, so that they could get food in our schools while they were going to school. Because it was good for the United States military to have a workforce that could enlist in the military and meet the standards. That is the origin of the SNAP program, and that has been a program that has sustained our farmers over time. And I think that we are losing sight of that. And so my question to the senator from New Jersey is to hear a little bit more. Have you heard about the SNAP program and also the work that the farmers in New Jersey have been doing in terms of organic and sustainable farming, which is really where the beginning of the organic and sustainable farming movement has begun in this country?
Yeah, I'm aware of another one of my colleagues. I just want to say, yes, I'm aware of that. The way that Trump, I'm just going to summarize, contract freezes. This is one of the ways Trump and Musk are causing havoc. Program cuts. They've eliminated programs, as you said, that support local food systems, including those that connect farmers with food banks and schools and promote regenerative practices. It's stunning. USDA destabilization. Trump and Musk have laid off USDA employees, closed USDA offices, hindering the agency's ability to provide essential services to farmers. Tariff policies. Trump's tariff policies implemented without consultation with or support from farmers will increase farmer costs and consumer food prices. And finally, general chaos, which seems to be something, as you're pointing out, that they're very good at. Farmers already deal with so much uncertainty from prices, weather, pests, and more. They should not have to deal with uncertainty from Donald Trump's administration that will undermine everything that they do.
A question for the senator from New Jersey.
I will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
I would like to ask the senator from New Jersey a question pertaining to the Farm Bill. You speak to uncertainty. One of the things that I've heard from my agricultural sector and my farmers, Farm Bureau in Illinois, is the desperate need for this body to pass a Farm Bill, especially when it comes to crop insurance, the crop insurance program, as well as, again, retaining SNAP benefits. I do think that crop insurance is something that our farmers care deeply about. It is a tool that they use to make sure that they are able to survive when there are bad crop years, whether that is through disease, whether that is through drought or floods. Our farmers certainly, this is a program for them to sustain themselves and be able to look out for themselves. So it is a personal responsibility on the part of farmers. It is especially important for young farmers who are just starting out. Those margins are so tiny. And when you take away the commodity program and the USAID, when you take away SNAP program, and then you don't provide them with crop insurance, you're going to lose those family farms. And what's going to happen? Large agribusinesses are going to take over, and they don't have the well-being of the American people at their heart. And so, I would love to hear from the senator from New Jersey would you agree that what we should be doing right now is not attacking farmers and cutting commodity programs and cutting and freezing funding for USAID that it provides a market for farm products, but instead we should be working on passing a farm bill?
Yeah, I love you for bringing these things to point. Because by the way, with Adam Zipkin, we did a farm tour, and we were in Southern Illinois meeting with Republican farmers. This is now before the pandemic. And you see that we have so much common cause as they're trying desperately to hold on to their farms. And so the crop insurance program, we need to reimagine it so it's more accessible to independent family farmers, not just big agribusinesses. We need to be visionary about our farm bill to create a food system that the farmers want, that help them to be better stewards of the land. The oversubscribed programs for regenerative farming and cover crops and environmental practices. They want those things to preserve their soil, reduce their dependence on chemicals. They want those things. They want a farm bill that works for them, and we should be delivering that in a bipartisan way. So you are right on point. But do you hear that from the White House? Not at all. Not at all.
Would the senator yield for a question?
I will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Well, Senator Booker, I have a question for you about Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, but I want to start with a little bit of background.
Please.
As you may recall, when I was governor of New Hampshire, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, the program Medicaid expansion became an option for my state. And I worked with people of both political parties to make sure that the people of New Hampshire could actually get the benefit of Medicaid expansion. Expanded Medicaid meant that for the first time, working adults who couldn't earn enough money to actually buy insurance themselves, but who were working and single, could actually get health care coverage. Medicaid expansion meant that people with mental illness who wouldn't be covered by traditional Medicaid actually could get health care and could get coverage. People with substance use disorder, with addiction, could finally get Medicaid coverage and get better. And we worked across party lines, took a few tries, but we got Medicaid expansion done in New Hampshire. And today, Medicaid covers more than 180,000 people in my state, including more than 90,000 children, more than 15,000 people with disabilities, and nearly 10,000 seniors. And here's another number that people don't always think about. It covers 10,000 people who are getting addiction treatment. My state, as you know, has been very, very hard hit by the fentanyl crisis. And just in when the president gave his joint address in March, I brought a woman from New Hampshire with me who had been suffering from addiction. Medicaid expansion covered her treatment. She got into recovery. She's now working in the private sector, but also offering counseling and peer recovery services to people who are trying to get their addiction treated through Medicaid expansion. And she is now on private insurance. I remember talking to another Granite Stater while we were working to pass Medicaid expansion. So she had been laid off from her job as part of the Great Recession, right? She had an ongoing chronic stomach condition. So as she got laid off, her health insurance went away too, and she couldn't afford the COBRA fee to keep her health insurance. So she couldn't get health care. So she got sicker and sicker, so she couldn't go to work. But because she was a single adult, she couldn't get Medicaid coverage. So here's somebody who has been working, wants to work, has a chronic illness, can't get to work. We passed Medicaid expansion. She got coverage, she got treatment, and she got back to work. The other great benefit of Medicaid expansion covering people with addiction in New Hampshire has been that as people have gotten better, as more and more physicians have learned to integrate addiction care into primary care, we have a lot more people in recovery. And like many of our states, we also have a workforce shortage. What's been happening now? New Hampshire is a leader in recovery-friendly workplaces so that people who got this Medicaid expansion coverage, got their addiction treated, got better, can go to work in the private sector and get private insurance. That's some of the benefit of Medicaid expansion. But of course, what we are hearing about now from the House and Senate Republicans is their desire to make massive cuts to Medicaid, including Medicaid expansion. And they're doing it. They want to rip away health care from millions of Americans so that they can pay for big tax breaks for billionaires and corporate special interests. So the Republicans have proposed cutting up to a third of federal funding for Medicaid. If those cuts go into effect, that could mean 30,000 children in my state will lose their health care coverage. That means 1 in 5 seniors in New Hampshire could lose their nursing home care. And all told, that could mean 60,000 people cut off from Medicaid, including, for instance, a young man whose parents I just met at the airport, actually, who has autism and Medicaid pays for his health care, right? But he could be cut off too. So if Republicans continue with this plan, I am really, really concerned about what is going to happen to millions of Americans who currently get their health care through Medicaid. So Senator Booker, can you address the ways in which Medicaid helps provide health care for Americans and the disastrous impact it would have if Republicans proceed with their plan to take coverage away from up to 25 million Americans just so that they can pay for big tax breaks, by the way, for people who are already billionaires?
So before I answer the senator's question, I just want anybody who's watching to know that, I'll put it bluntly, this is one of the baddest ass human beings serving here in the Senate. You have been a governor of a state with all the challenges. You are beloved. I've spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, folks. It's after New Jersey. It's one of my favorite new states. No disrespect to New Mexico over here on my right. But I love your state. I love the people of your state, and they love you. You are an extraordinary governor. You are a trailblazer, a glass ceiling breaker, a name taker. You are a badass. And to have served with you as my colleague, you have the kind of leadership in the Senate that is needed more of. Somebody that stands in the middle and draws people together to common sense and pragmatism. I started on health care, some 16 so hours ago. And I read, you would be proud of me, because she's one of these voices that comes to me and says, hey, Cory, let's bring people together. I know that the presiding officer, who's new here, but he has the same spirit of trying to bring people together. And this might be the third time I've seen him in the chair over the last hours. 17 hours. Thank you, sir. But you whisper in my ear all the time. We've got to find a way to do this together. We've got to find a way to put more indivisible into this one nation under God. And so I hope that you would be proud, because I told my staff, who prepared with days preparing all these sections, from farming to environment, all the ways that Donald Trump is betraying his promises, betraying America, driving up costs, wrecking our economy, endangering us globally and here at home, and turning us back on a lot of our values, all while disrespecting this document more than any president I've seen. But I wanted to make sure, I told the instructions to my staff, pull from all the Republicans you can. We want to use the Wall Street Journal. We want to use the Cato Institute. We want to bring this together, because what we're standing up here is not to talk about left or right. We're talking about what is right or wrong. I do not want to talk about this being a Democratic moment. It is a moral moment. And you are the perfect senator to be asking these questions about health care to me, because of what you stand for. When you got elected as governor twice, I think, when you got elected to the Senate here, you had to get votes from Democrats, independents, or Republicans, or you can't win in New Hampshire. I've been in your state. I've met the people. And God, you have a very participatory democracy up there. People feel like if you're not going north to south house parties, you have to engage directly with the people. They don't care what party you ascribe to. They want to feel you, see you. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's why I think you're such a badass leader. And so you would have been proud of me when I did the healthcare section, because I read from Republican governors and Democratic governors. 40 states expanded Medicaid, and all of these governors, all of these voices said exactly what you're intimating here is, do not let Donald Trump cut $880 billion out of Medicaid. It will crush rural hospitals. Yep. It'll crush level 1 trauma care centers. It'll crush organizations that deal with beautiful disabled children. It'll crush people who are struggling for health care. It'll crush nursing homes. It'll hurt red counties and blue counties. It will hurt America. Republican voices were saying that. And to have a bipartisan senator who embodies the spirit this place should ascribe to more, to say these things is affirming the truth. Why? Why are they rushing to cut $880 billion, which voice after voice that I read said it would do so much damage to people's lives, so much damage to healthcare providers, so much damage to hospitals? Why? The only two things that will result from that is that they'll extend the Trump tax cuts where the disproportionate benefits went to the wealthiest among us who are doing better than they've ever done in this country. They don't need it. Taking money from struggling folks and giving it to them is not the answer. And then the other thing, to a person who, like me, when we were executives, you were a governor, I was a mighty mayor, we had to balance our budgets.
Right.
But they're not balancing the budget. They're not lowering the deficit. They're increasing it by trillions of dollars. This makes no sense to a pragmatic person who has balanced budgets, who expanded health care access, who made her state work, who has love and respect and votes, frankly, from Democrats and Republicans. You know this makes no sense. And so if you're standing up, and colleagues of mine further to the left of me, then why aren't other people why did only one Republican in the House vote against it? He told the truth. Massey. I see some of my Republican colleagues here. He's a fiscal hawk. He told the truth. This budget is going to explode the American national debt, stealing from future generations. I can't vote for this. He was not bullied like other people in the House into doing what dear leader Donald Trump says. And so, my colleague, you are on the money. I have internalized your voice. There's only a few people's voices I've internalized. One of them is my mother, but you're not that. You're more my peer. You are one of those voices in America right now that we need, that does not slip into a partisan argument, but makes the pragmatic argument that what Donald Trump is trying to do with the aiding and abetting of congressional Republicans is wrong. It is fiscally wrong. It is morally wrong. It will hurt Americans. It is not for the common welfare. It's not for the common defense. Read the start of the Constitution, please. I beg of you. We all swore to uphold it. How do our founders begin? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the best blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. Trillions of dollars of deficit doesn't secure the blessing of liberties. It endangers our country. The common welfare is this idea that everybody should have access to what makes us free. What makes us free is not having medical debt. What makes us free is not being chained to uncertainty and security that if someone in my family gets sick, I will not be afforded. Still, the majority, or close to the majority, of bankruptcies in the United States of America are people who can't afford their health care bills. We need to find better ways to expand access and not cut more people off. You know this, former governor. There are a number of states that have these things called triggers, automatic triggers, that if the funding for Medicaid reduces to covering 90% of the costs, what happens in those states? Boom. Medicare expansion goes offline. So if you don't even cut it $880 billion, maybe you say, we'll just do $250 billion of an axe. States are going to lose their expansion. People are going to suffer and get hurt. Why? You said it, you said it, and you said it. You and I are the two people that want to see entrepreneurs make money. You and I want to see small business people thrive. We don't hate rich people. We think that's great. It's often, not always, Donald Trump, it's often a sign of people in America using the ingenuity, applying it, and being successful. But you and I both know that the richest people in this country don't need more tax cuts. It is morally wrong. It is fiscally wrong. It is a wrong in the name of God and America. How could we be doing this to ourselves?
Will the senator yield for another question?
I can't call you one of the baddest ass people I've ever worked with and not yield to your questions, but I have to read the words. I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Well, thank you for yielding the question for a question while retaining the floor, and thank you for the very nice compliments. I do have a question for you about Social Security, and then I think another colleague of mine has additional questions. But look, as you know, you just talked about my wonderful state, New Hampshire. You also just talked about your mother, and I should just also let you know that my mother always made me memorize the preamble to the United States Constitution. So as I listened to you read it, I thought,
shots fired
Mom,
on the Senate floor. Where's the parliamentarian?
I hope my mom is watching.
Rule
right
19
now.
her.
But here's my question, and just by way of background. As you know, New Hampshire is a small state. It's a very rural state. And recently, the Trump-Musk forces have announced that they want to close a Social Security office in Littleton, New Hampshire. Now, Littleton, New Hampshire, that Social Security office, which takes applications and provides technical assistance for people who need Social Security or need Medicare or who have questions about their current coverage, right? It is the northernmost office in New Hampshire. So they closed that office, and now my folks in the North Country, and there are about 334,000 people in New Hampshire with Social Security, right? My people in the North Country will have to drive as far as 100 miles to go to another New Hampshire Social Security office. And meanwhile, of course, they're laying off people from Social Security offices, and they're making it harder to get assistance via the telephone, which, as you know, many people who are on Social Security find the telephone the easiest way to make a connection, get technical assistance. So Elon Musk has called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. He says he wants to cut $700 billion from Social Security and Medicare. So my question to you, as we're looking at a administration that says that it wants to make things more efficient, but is actually laying people off, closing offices, making it harder for people to actually connect with the Social Security office. My concerns, of course, are that this is just going to delay claims, delay coverage, make it harder for people to get on Social Security because actually Trump and Musk want to cut Social Security. Trump said, of course, that he was going to protect it when he was running for office. But now he's letting Musk do his cuts. So, Senator Booker, can you speak to the ways in which seniors across the country count on Social Security benefits that they have paid into? Right? This is not charity. People pay into the Social Security system. They earn the benefit. And can you talk about the disastrous impacts if this administration takes benefits, Social Security, Medicare away from our seniors?
Earlier, or last night, I had a whole chapter on Social Security outlining not just what you said, my colleague, my friend, but stories from seniors. And some of them really got to me. They were hard to read through. I have to say, I had prepped this by reading a lot of them, but somehow on the floor, when I read about the woman who had Parkinson's, when I read about the person taking care of their elderly parents, a spouse with dementia, children with special needs, and Social Security, it helps a lot of folks, but here's the craziness of the Trump attacks on the Social Security Administration. First, he makes people insecure about it. My mom lives in this amazing senior home, Las Ventanas, in Las Vegas, Nevada. Most of the people there, first of all, I love them all for who they are, not their party affiliation, but it's more Republicans than Democrats. And the stories my mom tells me about just the worry that they or other people in their family have because of Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme, of Donald Trump talking about utter lies from the highest post in the land during a joint address, savaging Social Security with lies that everybody from conservative papers to Democratic papers to right-leaning, left-leaning papers have all called out lie, 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 lie. There are not millions of people receiving false payments. They've insinuated so much insecurity that people were writing me letters talking about they're losing sleep. They have so much anxiety because they only live on their Social Security check. And Brother Howard Luckman, who I know, and I don't know what he was thinking when he said it, a billionaire talking about his mother-in-law. I don't know what you were thinking, Howard. I just don't understand it, how you're saying if she misses a payment, she's okay, but if people complain, they're probably fraudsters. Do you understand how many millions of Americans only have that as their only protection between poverty and destitution? That if they miss a payment, they can't make their rent, they can't buy food? And so they've created so much insecurity, so much fear, and I compared it, Governor, I compared it to the difference between an FDR and a Donald Trump. FDR knew people were suffering. They knew people were afraid, and he stood before the American public and didn't lie to them, didn't attack people, didn't demean people, didn't degrade people. He comforted people. He allayed their fears. He inspired them. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. What an opposite in leadership. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people who right now don't know, but then my colleague from Massachusetts comes in and makes a very clear point, the professor we have in our caucus, she makes a clear point. They've already done benefit cuts because when you close offices in rural areas, that person who is missing a check or has an issue, now they have to drive, how many miles? 100 miles. Now, what is that hardship to a senior? I got heard from people in their 90s. They already are having benefit cuts. The Wall Street Journal, I told you, I was trying to make you proud. I wanted to get as many sources from anybody that was more center to right. And I read from the Wall Street Journal and said the customer service in Social Security is going from bad to worse. That was the title of the article. So they're already doing cuts. They're already heaping insecurity on our seniors, heaping inconvenience on our seniors, heaping fear upon our seniors, heaping insecurity, making people lose sleep. This is wrong, 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 wrong. This is not a model of leadership. It's a model of cruelty and mean-spiritedness and hurting people. When is it enough, America? When is it enough that we say it may not be my grandmother that depends on that Social Security check, but I love America, and you cannot love Americans. You cannot love America. You cannot call yourself a patriot. Please listen to me. You cannot say you love this country and that you're a patriot, because patriotism is love of country, but you can't love your country unless you love your countrymen and women. And love means that if somebody, some mother or grandmother is hurting, is afraid, that I'm going to stand up and do what I can to comfort them and fight for them. Because today it might be your grandmother, it might be your family with a disabled child. This is not right or left, it is right or wrong. This is not a partisan moment, it is a moral moment. Where do you stand? We started this by talking about John Lewis. It is time for good trouble, necessary trouble. Thank you, my friend. Even though you made fun of me for in my tired state not remembering the very important preamble to the Constitution.
Very well.
Thank you very much. That actually means I take your compliments because you don't give them abundantly or overly well, so thank you very much.
Senator Yield for a question.
Heck no, not to you, not to you, not to you. Let me tell you, I have something to get off my chest about you. I woke up I woke up yesterday morning, and the first thing I did, now this shirt's all wrinkled and a little ripe, but the first thing I did is grab a gift from you. People don't get upset ethics-wise. We're allowed to give each other's gifts. This was like, I don't know how much it cost, but you gave me, I was talking to you about traveling and how we have to pack bags and go all the time. And he said, you told me I travel with a steamer. And I pulled out this little steamer for this shirt that I'm wearing right now. You were one of the kindest, sweetest people I know. You're one of my closest friends here in the United States Senate. And I want to say something about you, because in this moment, if people are watching, I want people to go there. We had a conversation. You came to my office. It's always a sign of respect when you come to the senator's office. And you came to my office, and we were talking about social media, and I was encouraging you. You were a little resistant, if you don't mind me outing you, to open up and get more on the platform. We were talking about ideas and talking about Social Security, talking about Medicare, Medicaid. You opened up to me, and I hope I'm not betraying confidences. And I asked you just like, what do you do? Like, you were such an amazing human being. You're one of the kindest people I know. I asked you, what do you do on your weekends? What do you do for fun? Let people see it. And then you kind of made me pause when you said, well, my mother's getting kind of old. She's getting older. I love her so much. And you said that my brothers, my siblings and I, we alternate weekends just spending time with our mother. It was one of the sweetest things I heard. And then I said to you, what do you do with your mom? And then you brightened up and you choked me up, you jerk, because you said, what I love to do with my mom is to dance with her in the kitchen. When we're in the kitchen making food or something, I just love sometimes to put on a song and we dance. I don't know why it struck me as beautiful, and this is what I hope people will do right now. I said, well, why don't you record that? And I didn't think you would do it. You would ask her if you could do it, but you then put up one of the most beautiful videos I've ever seen from one of my colleagues of you and your mom in the kitchen. I think it's on your Instagram page. And I have looked at that video. I'm probably all the views right now of my colleague, this big United States senator, loving his mother so much. And we are talking about that. I've talked about this on the floor. Great nations respect their elders. They take care of them. One of my colleagues, when they asked me a question about Social Security, they reminded me of what it was. The greatest anti-poverty program in the history of America. That Social Security rescued millions of Americans from being in poverty. It virtually ended poverty, although the checks now are becoming meager and meager as prices are going up. More people are getting lower and lower towards poverty, and people who live on those checks live very austerely. But you're just this amazing guy that turns your own lived experience into greater and greater urgencies to fight for the people of New Mexico. So I did not want to yield for a question until getting that off my chest. You are my friend, you are my colleague, you are my brother, and more than you know it, you're my inspiration. So yes, I yield for a question while retaining the floor now. I feel like I have so much power here to yield to my colleagues who are often more eloquent. I'm like afraid of White House because he's one of the brainiest people in the Senate. But I'm now have the control. But for you, now that I've gotten this off my chest and hopefully embarrassed you, but maybe added a few more views to my favorite video, I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Well, Senator Booker, thank you. I won't be surprised if Mom's watching right now, so you're probably going to get some messages from her. But I want to thank my friend and colleague from the great state of New Jersey. You've been holding this space for the American people now for well over 17 hours. Well, we represent different parts of the country, Senator Booker. We have the same values. I learned from you the importance of treating people with respect and dignity. That's what we should all be talking about here today, every day. I've also learned a lot about grace from you. Now, I come to the floor to ask you a question about farmers. You and I both appreciate the long hours that farmers put in to take care of that soil, their families, the planning that goes into this, sowing seeds. Sometimes you have to do a little weeding to make sure that we're going to all benefit from the fruits of their labor. Now, having fresh fruit in a grocery store is not something that can be taken for granted. And for a lot of our constituents, I've had these conversations with nominees that have come before us when they ask me, well, why is someone just eating potato chips or Doritos from that local store? I'll educate them by saying that's the only store around.
Yes.
There's food deserts everywhere. But we could do something about that. We have programs in place that recognize the importance of getting someone a meal that needs that meal. Supporting our farmers out there to sow those seeds, to help them with their planting. But what I'm seeing right now, Senator Booker, is our farmers have been on the receiving end of these federal funds being taken away from the United States Department of Agriculture, these reckless tariffs that are hurting farmers and ranchers just as much as they're hurting anyone in America. Outbreaks, bird flu. People know what the cost of eggs are at the store now. And then they look into what's going on here, and there's this bird flu that's going around. And my constituents ask, well, why did the United States Department of Agriculture under Donald Trump fire the people, epidemiologists, that are responsible for containing this thing? It didn't make any sense to folks. I was in the Ag Committee earlier today, Senator Booker, and I was asking some questions to USDA. And I learned that on March 7th, 2025, under the Trump administration, the United States Department of Agriculture terminated the Local Food and Schools Program and the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement And then they went further, and they also notified grant applicants on March 24th that the fiscal year 2025 competition for the Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program is canceled. Why does this matter to farmers and ranchers and people back home? These programs allow food banks and schools and others to purchase food from our local farmers. Now, our local farmers aren't just making a decision on what seed's going to be planted so they can sell the lettuce next week. They start this a year going back. So when the United States Department of Agriculture a year ago started talking to these farmers and ranchers about what programs were going to be in place, and then these farmers responsibly went and found customers to sell their food, food banks, different groups around the country, they planned the rest of the year to be able to get that nutritious food into the bellies of people that need it most. That sounds like respect and dignity.
Yep.
What's not respectful is when the Trump administration gives them a few days' notice and pulls the rug from under them and cancels the program that's going to allow the food bank, their customer, to buy their food. What do the farmers have to do now across America? Now, it gets worse and worse. I won't go into all of it, Senator Booker, but here's one of the dirty little secrets. All of these programs that are being taken away from the American people, it's to find an extra dollar for this tax policy under Donald Trump that my constituents started calling back in 2017 the Trump tax scam. Wow. Right? Well, why are you calling it that? And they said, well, everyone promised me, I'm making less than the median income, making less than $80,000, which is a lot of money in New Mexico. Across America, median income there is a little lower. I was told that we were going to get the brunt of this tax cut, recognizing that we're hardworking and how hard it is to make ends meet. But that's not what happened. Most of this went to families and folks making over $2.8 million. I don't have anything against those families. I wish them well. I want them to make more, $10 million next year. But they don't need a tax cut. That should be one of those hardworking families that were told that they were being prioritized, but they're the ones that told me anyway, that this was a Trump tax scam. That's the secret. That's where all this money's going. So, Senator Booker, whether I'm in a grocery store and I'm chatting with constituents, we're out there looking at egg prices or whatever it may be, they're concerned about what's going on here, and all they're asking for me to share with my colleagues here is just tell them to tell us the truth.
Yes.
If they're going to vote to take these programs away, they have the votes by Republican colleagues. Just be honest. Treat my constituents with the respect and dignity so that they can plan. So that a single mom that has a child whose Medicaid may get ripped away, but that child has cancer, how are they going to plan for care in 6 months? So that farmer who started planting seeds recently but was planning over a year on what to do so they could find another customer so that they're not going to lose that farm as well. Now, before I ask you this question, sir, I want to end with this. Senator Booker, you often share a story of Abraham Lincoln's inaugural address, his second, and the man whose reviewed mattered most to the 16th President of the United States.
One of my favorite stories.
When asked his opinion of Lincoln's performance, former slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass replied, "It was a sacred effort." Let me be the first to say this is a sacred effort, Senator Booker, and I'm proud to stand alongside you. So, Senator Booker, the question that my constituents and I have for you is, can the farmers and ranchers of America afford to pay for another Trump tax scam with all this nonsense that's going on? I mean, it's a question I get when I'm at church. I say not during church, but after church is okay.
Yeah.
Or at the grocery store. But when I'm visiting with folks back home, this is what they're asking me.
And thank you for the question. You said it, the same words that literally, I didn't write these words, my staff wrote this little paragraph here. Trump is pulling the rug from out from under producers that need stability and reliable markets. Because you and I sit, right by each other in the Ag Committee, and we see this connection that you so beautifully say, this idea that we are separate from each other, the invisible lines that divide us in this country are bunk compared to the strong ties that bind us. That farmer producer in a rural neighborhood is deeply connected to the person in my community. And I live in an inner city, Newark, New Jersey. There is a powerful spiritual connection. And you talk to that farmer, and they've got pride that they're feeding America. And they have pride in the ground. You described it so beautifully. They have pride in their soil. They want to be stewards of the land, and they want to create a vibrant American food system. And they rely on people that empower them in that process and don't pull the rug out from under them, drag back contracts, cut programming, especially not those programs that help them get fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy foods to food banks. You talk to the food banks. They'll attest that families, how grateful they are for that fresh fruits and vegetables. You said it right. Parents want the best quality food for their kids. But this food system is killing them. And when I heard the new Secretary of HH&S talk about, hey, we need to get greater access to fresh, healthy foods. Food is medicine. Things I've been saying for years. And what do when they get in there? They cut the very programs that help our farmers and get fresh fruits and vegetables to kids to deal with chronic disease. How could you say out of one side of your mouth, Trump, oh, I'm going to let the Maha people go their way, and then the first thing you do is cut the programs that help kids get healthy, nutritious foods? It makes no sense. It makes no economic sense. It hurts our farmers. It hurts our farm workers. It hurts our end users. It's not fair, and I appreciate your question, sir. Thank you.
With the senator from New Jersey, yield for a question.
Let me think about this for a second.
You take your time thinking about it, sir.
I want to thank Senator Whitehouse. He's been a colleague and a friend for a long time, and he stands right there at that desk for very long speeches. I think I'm trying to go a long time. You go a consistency of times, and you've talked about the climate crisis. You've talked about the Supreme Court scams. You've not only educated members in this body on these issues, you've educated America. You are a YouTube star now, and I learn from you every time I hear you speak. So I'm a little worried right now, but I'm going to step out on faith and yield for a question while retaining the floor.
So, first question. It's been 17 hours. How are you doing?
I shall not complain. I shall not complain, but thank you for checking in on me, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you for what you're doing. Second question, if you would yield for a second
yes,
question without yielding the floor.
I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
One of the ways in which I try to discuss what's going on in this country when people are horrified, anxious, astonished, whatever, is to describe it as the rule of the looters and the polluters. The looters are the creepy billionaires coming to government, trying to figure out how to get even more for themselves. It used to be that people thought that there was a thing too rich to steal. That doesn't seem to be a thing for these creepy billionaires. They're more than happy to wreck Social Security so that they can send in their tech bros and their private equity folks to put right what they have broken. And the looting goes on across the entire face of government, scarred and disfigured by Musk and his little Musk rats, I like to call them. And then, of course, you've got the polluters who are doing a similar thing, which is to steal from the public, only instead of stealing through government, they're stealing by dumping their pollution into our common air, into our common climate future, into our waters, into our lands, and defending through political influence and clout and power and dark money in this building their privilege to pollute for free. And the end point of both of those is regular Americans who are getting, to put it bluntly, pretty hosed, so that people on the other side of that, the creepy billionaires who are behind the climate denial scheme, who are out to wreck the American government so that it can't regulate their conduct or make them behave like honest bankers and investors or insurers or whatever. React for a moment, if you would, to that framing of our beautiful country now being subject to the really malevolent whims of the big looters and the big polluters.
Well, first of all, I will say to you that I meet wealthy people like a group called the Patriotic Millionaires who advocate for progressive tax policy and are the first to say and speak out against this tax scam. I don't, again, it's, to me, what does patriotism mean to you? Patriotism, by definition, means love of country. If you don't love your fellow countrymen and women, how do you love your country? And so what would you do? I actually know what you would do. I don't even have to answer this question. If somehow you came into $1 billion or more dollars, you would not be asking for more. You would literally say, wait a minute, Republican Congress, wait a minute, Donald Trump, what you're trying to do is take away health care from expectant mothers, from disabled children, from seniors, in order to give me more tax credit. I would think that the patriotic thing to do, that the thing in love, you would say, Donald Trump, go screw yourself.
If the senator would yield for another question while retaining the floor.
I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
I would add to your comment and request your response to the observation that not only is this an appalling manifestation of greed by people who already have more money than they're able to spend in their entire lifetimes, but the manner in which they are accomplishing their purpose is pretty loathsome in and of itself. Because the manner in which they are accomplishing their selfish purposes is to corrupt and degrade this great American democracy that we are all here to defend.
Yes.
And they do it by taking their billions and running it through phony front groups, so it pops up as dark money in elections. And of course, the beneficiary of the dark money, the candidate, figures out exactly who's behind the big dark money contribution that ends up in the super PAC that is supporting them. And of course, the big donor knows that they gave the money. So the deal between the creepy billionaire and the in hoc to them political candidate is made. But because it's dark money, because it's secret, because it goes through front groups and into the super PAC and ultimately into the campaign, courts don't know, public doesn't know, voters don't know. Everybody else is left out of the joke.
Yes.
And so, bad enough that they're here arguing for excess benefits for themselves compared to regular Americans. Worse, they're using dark money corruption to get there. So how is that patriotic?
I want to answer this question so badly, but the crazy thing is the person best to answer this question is the person who asked it. You have sat here and given this detailed analysis to show how this group of very wealthy billionaires in this country are so perverting our system by creating these front groups that then interfere in our democracy in the most disgusting of ways. Even if you are like me and you that can't stand the decision Citizens United, even in Citizens United, the majority opinion really projected that we should do the Disclose Act, which we have tried to bring to this floor and get passed. It says no more dark money. How do we have a political system that is so corrupted by billionaires who so with all of their money drown out the voices in politics of other Americans? A great example of that is they're getting so reckless that many billionaires aren't even hiding it anymore, i.e. Elon Musk. He's like saying, hey, I'm going to roll up into a Supreme Court case up in one of our best Great Lakes states. And I'm just going to dump $100 million there and then give away, as if to insult our democracy, $1 million checks as part of my effort to influence an election with my overwhelming flood the zone amount of billions of dollars. And by the way, hey, it's a pretty good investment, right? I'm Donald Trump's his biggest campaign contributor, and as soon as he gets elected, a lot of my stock goes up, although Tesla stock isn't doing so great right now. The reality is, we live in a country right now that we're giving more and more ability for billionaires to use their wealth to rig the system and then get more wealth as a result of that. It is so corrupt and so corrupting to this. We have been talking about this, as you said, for 18 hours now. This big, unchecked corporate contributions, billionaire dollars, dark money in front organizations that nobody in the Senate has outlined better than you, is corrupting our Constitution. And even the bad case Citizens United, even they said this shouldn't happen. You all should write laws in this place that force people to disclose where that money's coming from. But how many years has it been since Citizens United? Many. And how many times have we failed? 15? Guys, I don't know, and I'm so grateful for this man, because all my colleagues who are assembled here know, doggedly and determinedly, you have stood right there with charts and graphs. You've outlined it ad nauseum. They've attacked you because your truth is so threatening to them that more people will know about how big money is corrupting democracy. And so how many assaults are we going to have to watch in 71 days when we now have a president that can create a meme coin? Isn't there something here, my great constitutional scholar, a big word called emoluments? This president has basically created a meme coin where we now know, hard to trace this, that millions of dollars have been put into his pocket. I have my team reading about it right now. Foreign countries, Russian oligarchs, incredible Arab wealth. You want to pay off the Donald Trump? You know, because his government is being run like this. It's not JFK. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You've seen how he's behaved. It's ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for Donald Trump. That's how he does business. How do we know that? Look at the evidence of the last 71 days. If you are a law firm that comes to him and offers him $40 million of pro bono work, God, how many people I love in Newark had that kind of legal representation, pro bono. He is beating you up, threatening to ruin your business until you come to him and tell him what you're going to do for him. We're seeing it. You want a merger? You want a merger? What do? Give $1 million to his inaugural committee, and then find ways to get money to him through his meme coin, kowtow to him in any way possible. Senator Whitehouse, nobody has outlined this more than I have. Nobody, more than you have, excuse me. And I encourage people, I feel like now I'm advertising everybody's social media. Go to his YouTube. I call him a YouTube star. I'm not joking. You have on YouTube, I know, just great details and outline about how the corruption of money in politics is getting worse and worse and worse in this era of billionaires like Elon Musk who have no shame anymore. And I'm going to say it on the Senate floor. There are so many reports and stories of him threatening elected leaders, threatening to put $100 million in a primary challenge if they don't kowtow to what the great leader is telling them to do. This is, you use the word all the time, and I'm going to say it over and over. This is corrupting to our democracy and amounts to another assault on our Constitution. How much will we take, America, until we say enough, until we say no more, until we say pass the Disclose Act? Bring back the dark money, put light on it, shine the light of truth on this web of dark money lies. How long will we endure this? I hope that you and I are in the Senate when you no longer have to give that speech, because we took action on the Senate floor to end this nightmare of billionaires trying to outsize influence in our democracy.
Will the senator yield for a question?
Not immediately. I just want to say to Patty Murray, thank you. You were a co-conspirator in my life of trying to cause good trouble. You are one of the most powerful people in the United States Senate, yet you have never lost your compassion and your care for people. You're like somebody else I talked about in the Senate, two of my favorite people who lives this ideal that I may be a United States Senator, I may be head of appropriations, I may be President pro tem of the Senate, but I will never lose my connection to the people I represent and to the convictions that brought me to this place. You are such an honorable soul, you're such a great American, and you've been such a dear friend to me this Congress. I savor the times where you let me come to you're a lot more seniority than me. You've got a great hideaway with a view. One day, maybe. But I just want to say thank you, Patty Murray, for being so kind to me. And you're showing up right now gives me a lot of strength, puts more fuel in my tank. And so now I feel all this power. Now you outrank me in every imaginable way here, and you're the head of our Democrat appropriations, so I'm obligated by the state of New Jersey to be very obsequious to you. I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Well, I thank the senator from New Jersey. Thank you for your kind words. And I would just say the country is so grateful for what you are doing right now, because so many people are so frightened, worried, scared, and angry about what is happening to the basic values of this country that so many people have just thought would be there, that their kids would be able to go to school and get an education and not have to worry that the Department of Education was going to be gone and there wasn't a watchdog anymore or somebody to help them, or that the research at NIH was going to be dismantled. Perhaps they had a family member who was in the middle of some kind of scientific experiment that is now being dismantled. What happens to their hope? I hear from people on so many topics, seniors, who are waiting on hold for hours and then getting hung up on because there's nobody to answer the phone anymore. These are basic values that we have as a country, that we care for other human beings, and we're there as a country for them. And you are showing that fight today and inspiring so many people, and I will ask you a question in a minute, but I want to personally thank you for what you are doing today. It is so important. You are the voice of so many people today, and I so appreciate it. Now, I want to change the dynamic a little bit. I wanted to come today. You have talked about the impact in so many areas in our country, but I wanted to come and ask you about something really personal to me, and that is the impact on our veterans today. The senator may not know this, but when I came to the Senate many years ago, I asked to be on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I was the first woman ever to ask to be on the Veterans Committee. And the reason for me was very personal. As you may know, my dad was a World War II veteran, and my family relied on his VA care when he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. But I also, when I was in college during the Vietnam War, many of my friends and colleagues were on the streets demonstrating, and my heart was out to them, but I was thinking about those men and women my age who were going over to Vietnam and coming back and injured in many different ways. So I actually did my college internship. I asked to be at the Seattle VA. And I went to the Seattle VA during the Vietnam War and served on what was the psychiatric ward at the time. And I sat and worked with young men and women who were my age, in college age, who'd been sent there and came back with severe mental health impacts. Now, today we call that PTSD, but at the time we didn't know it. And I was looking at these men and women who volunteered to go over, or sometimes their number came up at the time, and came home and were going to be impacted the rest of their lives. And I learned firsthand what it means when somebody says, I will go for my country to fight for all of you, so that you have that America that you've been talking about here for you when you get home. And our promise to each and every one of them was, if you serve your country in the military, we will take care of you when you get home. That is a promise I hold near and dear to my heart, which is why I asked to be on the Veterans Committee when I first came here, first woman ever. And I will tell you, I've seen the impact time and time again. I go home and I hold town halls when I was newly here, and there'd be a lot of veterans who'd come and talk to me and tell me what's going on, what needed to be fixed. But always at that time, I will share with my colleagues, women never said anything. There were a few always in the back of the room, and it wasn't until the regular meeting was over and they'd come up quietly to me and say, I need to tell you what's happening to women veterans. I need to share with you sexual assault. I need to share with you that there's not the facilities. I go to the VA, and it's a men's-only kind of place. There's no OBGYNs. There's nobody to do mammographies. And I often don't feel comfortable sitting in that waiting room with a whole lot of people after I have had the experiences that I've had, and there's no place for women to go. So we've worked really hard to make sure the VA works for women. We've worked really hard to make sure the VA addresses the issues of today. The PACT Act that we worked so hard to make sure that men and women who were victims of a toxic exposure overseas got the services they need. I could speak for 2 hours here about all the things we've done. But then I see what this administration is doing to those men and women who we asked as a country to serve overseas or to here at home, in service of all of us and the promises we've made them. And I think, what are they doing? They're undermining the very value that all of us have given to Americans who serve above and beyond. So when I hear of 2,000 layoffs a few weeks ago, I go, wow, where's that coming from? Well, I know, because I'm getting the phone calls, like I'm sure you are, from a VA researcher who has been taken off the job, fired, unexplained, told he wasn't doing a good enough job somehow, doing research on basic things like prosthetics, or doing basic research on PTSD, or doing basic research on the kinds of things that our men and women who serve overseas are subjected to and need to come home and have the specialized service and resources that they need. Or I hear from veterans who can't get the services that they've been asked for. So now when we are hearing this administration is about to cut 80,000, you didn't hear me wrong, 80,000 more people from the VA, a vast majority themselves are veterans. I wanted to ask the senator, how does that hit you? How do you feel about that?
I'm so grateful you brought this up. And especially all the work we had to do when I got elected 12, 13 years ago. One of the earliest things I did is meet with women veterans in my state and heard these awful stories about how long it took to get gynecological care, the waits that they had to do, the indignities they had to endure. And I'm glad we've made so many strides, in part thanks to your leadership in New Jersey, with special dedicated facilities to our women veterans, with shortening those wait times, with prioritizing them. But you're now right. Their proposal is to cut 83,000 positions from the VA. And you know this, you said it, this just years ago, this governing body passed the PACT Act with overwhelming bipartisan support. It was signed by President Biden in August of 2022, the largest health care and benefit expansion in VA history. You were one of the leaders, increasing disability compensation and extending eligibility for VA care. To meet this increased demand, the VA added 61,000 employees in 2023. These new hires included claim processors, physicians, nursing staffs, medical support assistants, food service workers, and housekeeping staff. And now the progress this body made is in jeopardy by this president. We added 61,000 just to keep up with the demands and the needs, and now he's cutting 83,000. This is an article, if you don't want me to yield. DAV urges Veteran Affairs to be more transparent about vet care amid layoffs and budget cuts. Veteran Affairs Secretary Doug Collins says veterans' care won't be impacted. We saw the largest expansion of VA healthcare benefits in a generation under the PACT Act. Collins attended DAV's recent midwinter conference where he came from behind the podium, walked into the audience, and told attendees that vet care and benefits would not be impacted by the Trump administration. In recent appearances on CBS Eye on Veterans podcast, DAV Communications Chief and Air Force veteran Dan Clare said the VA has not demonstrated how it's going to keep its promise. They have not demonstrated it. DAV also does not have a lot of information about what's planned, he said. Can you imagine that? Leaving all these veterans with insecurity and uncertainty. Now we're hearing about the 83,000 people losing their jobs. 20,000 or so folks might be veterans themselves. We're concerned about how we're going to be able to cut that many people and maintain care and benefits. The VA hired thousands of staffers since 2022 in response to the PACT Act, which brought 800,000 new enrollees into its systems. Collins has said cutting the VA workforce by 83,000 would bring it back down to its 2019 level before we did all those expansions to help women's vets. Claire said he has not heard about specific performance problems with those who've been laid off. Well, you haven't heard about it. Veterans' needs have not changed, and they remain great. The people who are sick from the burn pits didn't necessarily get better overnight, and some of these folks are going to have a long road to hoe when it comes to their health. DAV is getting calls frequently from veterans who are scared, angry, and don't understand what's going on and how it's going to affect them. Claire was one of the first whistleblowers on burn pits in Iraq, which eventually inspired the fight to pass the PACT Act to help veterans who became sick or even died from their toxic exposures. When we started talking about dioxin, when Vietnam veterans heard that, they immediately thought of Agent Orange. And that's probably what this is, our generation's Agent Orange. There's a lot of decisions being made behind closed doors, he continued. We want to know what the plan is. We want to know what the plan is. We're not against efficiency of government. We're not against even removing VA employees who may not be fit performers. A veteran has a unique understanding of another veteran's needs, Claire continued. When you lose those folks out of the VA, the veterans, you lose an institutional capacity to understand veterans. It is also unclear how these cuts will impact VA research, which Claire also stressed has helped veterans deal with complex issues that are service-connected, such as traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress. In addition to being concerned about how recent budget cuts and staff reductions will impact veterans care and caregivers, Claire said DAV is also concerned about the impact on veteran-owned small businesses. DAV is asking veteran business owners whose contracts have been recently canceled or who have been fired from their VA jobs to reach out here. DAV is actively keeping a list of veterans negatively affected by the Trump administration's cuts and plans on fighting for them in the weeks and months to come. And those lists that they're keeping are getting longer and longer and longer of people affected by this. So to answer your question, it's absurd. It is offensive. It's ready, fire, aim. Tens of thousands of veterans laid off, veterans who do business and work in contracts ended. Why is this another group that the President of the United States is scaring? Frightened veterans, angry veterans. I'm hearing from them in my state. You know you're hearing them from yours. What's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? They have no answer for us. All they're doing is cutting Social Security staff, undermining the delivery of those services, the cutting the VA services. And why, by the way? Is it creating efficiency or effectiveness? No. Is it to create savings? Because we got to create savings to give more of those tax cuts to billionaires like Elon Musk. It is not fair. It is not right. When we send people off into the most dangerous environments on the planet Earth and ask them to put their lives on the lines for us, the least we can do as a nation is not penny pinch on their backs of the service that they deserve.
For one additional question.
I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
The senator's right. And so many veterans are afraid right now. And I had a veteran tell me that he was one of those people that got the letter, you haven't performed well. He worked for the National Park Service, actually. And he said, I've been saving lives. I've been cleaning trails. I've been making sure that the national parks are safe for all of you. And then he said to me, I'm a veteran. I served in the war. And I served my country there because I wanted to serve my country and my fellow Americans. And I came home and worked for the National Park Service to do the same. And now, as a veteran, my country's not there for me. And I would just say to my colleague and to everyone who's listening, to these men and women, that we make a promise to, that we say we will be there for you when you come home. That does not mean slamming a door in your face. It doesn't mean that you have to wait for hours to get the services that you earned. It doesn't mean that you will be mistreated. It means that we will honor you. And I would thank the senator for his response and just say to him again, do you think we're treating men and women in this country as great Americans by the actions that are being taken by this administration?
Thank you for the question. No, and I'm just going to read another article that's going to make even clearer the point you just laid that's so strong and so important. This is from Axios, How White House Firings Are Hurting Veterans. The Trump administration's big cuts to the federal government are hitting one group particularly hard, the country's veterans. Why it matters? Many of those who served in the military derive a sense of purpose and belonging from their government work, viewing it as a way to serve their country and help their peers outside of active duty. The big picture. It's not clear yet how many vets have been fired or will be. Last year, veterans made up 28% of the federal workforce. 28%. Per federal data, a far bigger share than the 5% in the private sector. About 36% of the vets working in civil service, more than 200,000 in total, are disabled or have serious health conditions per federal data. 36% of the vets working in civil service are disabled vets. This is the largest attacks on veteran employment in our lifetime, says William Attig, executive director of the Union Veterans Council, a large group that represents many of these workers. Attig, who was deployed in Iraq from 2003 to 2009, has been talking to newly unemployed members trying to get a tally of everyone whose job was lost. Zoom in now. Some veterans still holding on to their jobs for now are waiting for the hammer to drop. We're being smeared as leeches, but I just want to serve my country and provide for my family, an employee at the Department of Defense who's a disabled veteran, and requested anonymity because he didn't want to put his job at risk. Talk about free speech. We're being smeared as leeches, says a disabled veteran who stood for us. And he was thrilled to land his job, he said a few months ago, but is anxiously waiting to see if he'll be one of the more than 5,000 workers at the Pentagon that the Pentagon said it would fire next week. Privately now, GOP lawmakers are growing uneasy with the cuts to veterans. I know this because I know the heart of so many of my Republican colleagues. Politico reports adding that vets have been disproportionately affected by firings, and again, GOP lawmakers are growing uneasy about it. The White House did not say how many veterans have been fired. At least one department, the Department of Interior, has rapidly carved out an exception for him. President Trump has consistently stood up for our brave men and women, delivering crucial reforms that improve VA health care, said White House spokesperson Anna Kelly in an email. There are a few reasons government work attracts vets. The federal government has a veterans preference. Put simply, when deciding among a group of qualified candidates, they're first in line. I think that's right. You'd have to jump through a lot of hoops to not hire a veteran, said a former official. With more veterans working in government, more feel welcome to work among people who understand them. Others are drawn to their retirement benefits. Years of military service counts towards your federal pension. Plus, though, many of these folks feel drawn to mission-driven employment. Most veterans feel like they're putting on another uniform when they go work in other federal agencies. These jobs are a crucial piece of the puzzle in most military life, he says, adding that it's also a key part of suicide prevention for this at-risk group. One of the most important things you can do for a veteran is help them with a job. How can we expect to maintain what is in America an all-volunteer force if we fail to show those folks willing to serve how we care for our service members when they come home? Slashing more than 83,000 jobs from the VA alone, it's clear that these cuts are going to have a disproportionate impact on veterans, veteran contractors, and the services they receive. I'm angry about these cuts, but most of all, it should make all Americans feel a sense of sadness. We ask our veterans to sacrifice so much, and we all know, who know veterans, it's not just the veterans, it's also veteran families that make that sacrifice, that share in that service, that share in that commitment. And these veterans, some of the more talented, dedicated leaders I know, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they're called to serve. You know how many people jumped into service after 9/11? Friends of mine rushed to join the military, to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan. And now they're home, many of them with invisible wounds, many of them with visible wounds. And the services they rely on for their health care, the services they rely on as lifelines, the services they rely on often that give them hope and opportunity, not compounding their trauma. This is now being attacked by a president who's not keeping his promises. He says he values veterans, but the facts are different. She devoted her life to serving the U.S., then DOJ targeted her. It has been 6 days since Joy Marver was locked out of her office at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, 5 days since she checked herself into hospital for emergency psychiatric care, and 2 days since she sent a letter to her supervisors, "Please, I'm confused. Can you help me understand?" Now, she followed her wife into the storage room of their house outside of Minneapolis, searching for answers no one could give her. A half dozen bins held the remnants of 22 years spent in service to the U.S. government, first as a sergeant first class in Iraq, then as a disabled veteran, and finally as a VA support specialist in logistics. She devoted her career to a system that had always made sense to her, but now nobody seemed to know whether she had officially been laid off, or for how long, or even why. "Are you sure you never got an email?" asked her wife, Mickey Jo Carlson, 49. "How would I know?" asked Maver, 45. "They deleted my account." "Maybe it's because you were still probationary." "My boss said I was exempt," Marver said. "I was supposed to be essential." In the last few months, more than 30,000 people across the country were fired by President Trump's new initiative called the Department of Government Efficiency, a historic reduction of the federal workforce that has been all the more disruptive because of its chaotic execution. Entire agency divisions have been cut without explanation or mistakenly fired and then rapidly rehired, resulting in several lawsuits and mass confusion among civil workers. After a court ruled last week that many of the firings were illegal, the government began reinstating workers even as the Trump administration appealed the decision and promised more layoffs. The VA alone said it planned to cut about 80,000 more jobs this year, including tens of thousands of veterans. And for Marver, the shock of losing her job was eclipsed by the disorientation of being repeatedly dismissed and belittled by the government she served. She had watched on TV as Trump's billionaire advisor, Elon Musk, took to the stage at a political conference wielding a chainsaw to the beat of rock music, slicing apart the air with what he called his chainsaw for bureaucracy. She had listened to Trump's aides and allies deride federal employees for being lazy, parasitic, unaccountable, and essentially wasting taxpayer money in their quote-unquote fake jobs. In Marver's case, that job had meant helping to retrain soldiers for civilian work and coordinating veteran burials while earning a salary of $53,000 a year. Here's the note I got a little while after I was hired, Marver told Carlson, pulling a form letter from the government. "You represent the best of who we are as Americans," it read. "You could have chosen to do anything with your talents, but you chose public service. Kind of boilerplate, but it's nice," Carlson said.
Madam Chair, Senator Booker, will you yield for a question?
Before I yield, I just want to acknowledge my friend in the chair, and she's cracking a tight whip, so I appreciate you following the rules here. I got to read this now, and then I'm eager to get your question because you are one of the few people I knew before I got to the Senate.
That is what I wanted to talk about.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't yield. I didn't yield for a question.
I'm sorry.
You can't say anything, sir.
Oh.
The parliamentarian will jump all over you. I have the floor. So much power, it's going to my head.
Sir, will you yield for a question?
Oh, man. known you for like 25 years. I wanted to talk about you, but you're being so insistent. I'll reward your insistence and say I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
And let me ask you, Senator Booker, I can't ask you now, through the chair, let me ask you directly, how long a question you would like. Would you I'm happy to provide you with a 5-minute question or a 5-hour question. It depends entirely on
I actually
how you
believe that you would go a 5-hour question to try to help me power through. Senator,
you know,
we've been at this for...
My wife, Susan, would
I love your wife, Susan. I love you and your wife, Susan, but I love your children more. Your girls are
that's why I came down here. You know, when I remember...
Is this a question? Because I yield for the question while retaining the floor.
This is a question, please.
Okay, let's make it a 7-minute question.
This is a question. And I would say to the Senator from New Jersey and to the presiding officer, thank you very much for being here and for enduring this. When I started here, I was sitting in the chair all the way to the right of where you are today, Senator Booker. And I can remember the day you walked in to be sworn in, you came through those doors right there. And I had a huge smile on my face because I knew when you were walking through those doors, when you were walking into this chamber, you would bring with you the kids that you used to work for in Newark, New Jersey. And the reason I knew that was that when you were working for the kids in Newark, New Jersey, as the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, I was working for the kids in Denver as the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools. And at that time, in our country's history, we were engaged in a pretty profound effort to try to make better the schools in our respective communities. Not that everything was perfect, but we were trying to drive achievement for the kids in Newark and the kids in Denver, and we talked about it over many years. And here you walked into this chamber, a place where it would be easy to imagine has long had the habit of treating America's kids like they're someone else's kids, not like they're America's kids. I know that because if the kids in America were represented by the 100 desks that are in this Senate, roughly 9 of them would be graduating with a college degree in our country. 9 of these desks. If we thought about the rates of literacy, the failure in our country to be able to teach people how to read or do mathematics, decade after decade after decade, the proficient students would consume just a few desks in this place, and everybody else would not be able to do basic levels of reading and basic levels of math. And but here you were, somebody who understands that, and here you are, somebody who understands that. And one of the very first projects you and I worked on, this is coming to my question, was the child tax credit. This was an effort to turn back 30 or 40 years of trickle-down economics that said that what we're going to do is cut taxes for the richest people in the country and just have it trickle down to everybody else. Some people don't know what that means. And if I could, let me just say what that actually means. For you to understand what that tax policy is, that tax policy that Donald Trump has pursued now twice, once when he was president before, and now again, you have to imagine that there is a mayor in Newark, or there is a mayor in Denver, or a mayor in San Diego, or in Miami, who is saying to the people that live in his community, I have an idea. I'm going to go out and borrow more money than we have ever borrowed before as a community. I'm going to go out and borrow a ton of money. And your constituent, my constituents would say, wait a minute, Mayor, wait a minute, that makes me nervous. What are you borrowing all that money for? Because I'm worried about the fiscal condition of my city and my town. This conversation would happen in every city and every town in Colorado or New Jersey, whether they're Democratic or Republican mayors. You'd have to answer the question, what are you spending the money on? What are you going to borrow all this money for? Is it for our parks? No. Is it for our schools? No. Is it to give mental health services to kids who desperately need it? No. Is it for our roads and bridges, our infrastructure? No. Are you going to do something important for our water systems? No. What is the answer? What are you going to do with that money that you are borrowing, that you are mortgaging our kids' future? What is this important thing that you're going to do with it? The answer is we're going to give it to the two richest neighborhoods in New Jersey or Newark or Denver, and we're going to expect that it's going to trickle down to everybody else. That is the theory. That is what trickle-down economics is. That is what the Trump tax plan is, and there's a reason why no mayor in America has ever done it, because you would be run out on a rail. Because you couldn't explain it. You're going to borrow money from the kids of our police officers, our firefighters, our teachers, in order to cut taxes for the richest people in the community in the hope that they'll buy a little bit of an extra, luxury, and that's going to somehow generate economic activity for everybody else. It is demonstrably true that that has never worked. And by the way, these tax cuts, I say the presiding officer and everybody else within the sound of my voice, have literally never, ever come close to paying for themselves. That is a complete lie. That's why the Congressional Budget Office says this is going to blow a $4.6 trillion hole in our deficit. And for what? To give tax cuts to the richest people in America when they need them least? And when the income inequality is as great as it has been in our country since the 1920s, which brings me to my question. My cherished colleague from New Jersey, what was it we were trying to do with the child tax credit? There were a lot of people who believed that we couldn't even get it passed, that we couldn't even get the IRS to administer it. And then we did get it passed during part of the Biden administration, and lo and behold, more than 90% of the families in New Jersey got a tax cut. Lo and behold, more than 90% of the families in Colorado got a tax cut, not waiting for a trickle down from the wealthiest people, but they got a tax cut directly that did what? Cut in half the childhood poverty rate in America. In the richest country in the world, for one moment, we said, we don't have to accept this level of childhood poverty as a permanent feature of our democracy or a permanent feature of our economy. We can do something different than that. And Senator Booker, that is what you said when you were mayor of Newark. We don't have to accept these generational outcomes of poverty or of poor schools or of lead in the water. We can do something different. And that's what you've brought to the United States Senate as well. The tragedy from my perspective is there are many tragedies about the election of Donald Trump. And by the way, I'll say again on this floor, I don't blame him for getting elected president. You know, he ran and he won. Those of us that were trying to offer a different vision have something to explain about why we were not successful. But one thing I am certain of is that the kids in Newark and the kids in Denver are completely invisible to our current president. That he is not concerned with their welfare or even loses a minute's sleep over the next generation. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, this isn't a numbers and cents question, because I know even though you don't look tired, I'm sure you must be tired after all these hours and hours and hours. But can you talk a little bit, Senator, about how a society should be judged with respect to how we treat the next generation of Americans, how a tax bill should be judged by how we treat the next generation of Americans, how almost nothing else matters except what we do with respect to the next generation of Americans. I can tell you that my daughters, Caroline, Helena, and Ann, understand better than most your commitment to them and to your commitment to their generation, because you've been such an inspiration to them, not just today, but thank you for what you're doing, but for basically their entire lifetimes.
Well, thank you for the question. My long time friend, one of the folks I've known the longest, who I get to serve with. And what you did for me when I came here is you and Sherrod Brown, who sat right there by the door, you let Bennett and Brown become Bennett Brown Booker, 3 Bs, and joined together with some of the most extraordinary House members and Brother Warnock, and fight for the child tax credit. And it took years, but we found our opening when we called Ron Klain together before the election was even settled and said, please, this is the best thing our country can do, is to expand the child tax credit, make it fully refundable. Because we knew, as you said, it would give the overwhelming majority, between 80 and 93%, depending on what state you are, of the people in those states, we expanded the earned income tax credit, it would give them all a tax break. It was, inarguably, one of the greatest tax cuts in the last 50 years. And it cut child poverty in America nearly in half. And child poverty is a moral obscenity. Child poverty is violence against children. Violence. And here's the thing that you and I both know from the research. Every dollar you spend in raising a child above the poverty line, you return to society between $5 and $7 in economic growth and activity, or in lesser costs. Because kids above the child poverty line have, for example, less visits to the emergency room. I just don't understand how we are a nation, again, the wealthiest nation that has one of the highest child poverty rates. It makes no sense, 0 sense. When we proved once and for all with that 1-year effort, because we couldn't make it permanent, we were short 1 vote in this body, we proved forever in America that child poverty is a policy choice, not an inevitable reality. And so you ask the great question, why in a nation that was founded on men that studied virtue, the ideals of virtue, they were imperfect geniuses, but they really struggle with moral philosophy. We have the power, we've proven it, to cut child poverty in half. What's the argument against it? Wasteful spending? Come on. Giving trillions of dollars of tax cuts to the wealthiest in America, I'm sorry, it's wasteful spending, especially if it ends up blowing a hole. Those tax cuts don't pay for themselves. Trump won tax cuts, didn't. Renewing them won't. Doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get different results is the very definition of insanity. You are one of the most passionate. I remember a stem winder of a speech you gave in this body. You were so angry. I love it when it's Bennett Unchained. You were so angry when you started talking about the horrible policies of this nation that has eaten away the inheritance of children to come. Why you went off on the trillions of dollars spent on stupid foreign wars, where our brave men and women fought for this country, but this country made bad mistakes in these long wars. You talked about the money we spent there, and you talked about the first time in American history, common sacrifice every war before that, not just the men and women who were brave enough to go out and fight. You said the first time in American history that we said the only people that are going to bear a burden are the people that are going to go. The rest of you get tax cuts. George Bush, first time ever, we went to war and we gave tax cuts from the Civil War to the Revolutionary War to World War I to World War II. It was a common collective effort. My grandmother talked with pride about victory gardens and pride about war bonds. Everybody pitched in. And so here we are at another crossroads. And is America going to tolerate? Is America going to tolerate this idea that we're going to give extraordinary tax cuts to the overwhelmingly, disproportionately will accrue to the wealthiest amongst us? For what? If I was a mayor, I'd have to answer it. So I appreciate your question, but I also appreciate your moral indignation. I really do. I keep saying over and over again, elevating the voices of Americans on this floor, elevating the point, I hope, that we can't keep doing things like this as business as usual. These are real issues, not of right or left or right or wrong. This is a moral moment in America. And you point out a very clear choice we have when we talk about our tax policy. It should reflect our values. Thank you, sir.
Will the senator yield for a question?
For Jack Reed, I would do just about anything. So I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
First, thank you for continuing to highlight the harm that's being done by the Trump administration on average Americans, working Americans. Flouting the law, withholding federal funds, illegally shutting federal agencies, ruining long-standing alliances, increasing prices, taxes on American consumers. It goes on and on and on. Last week, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that it would fire 20,000 employees. Those cuts appear to be taking shape right now. Is the senator aware that there are reports that thousands of HHS staff have been locked out of their offices this morning?
To answer the senator's question, I've been on the floor since last night. I haven't read any news reports, but when you say that, am I aware of thousands and thousands of HHS employees who've been laid off of their jobs? I'm not aware of it. I'm not surprised. The question isn't, is Donald Trump going to lay more people off? The question isn't, is Donald Trump going to lay more disproportionately veterans off? The question is what are we going to do to stop it when it isn't thoughtful, reasonable cuts, when he talks about the people he's cutting as leeches, demeans and degrades their commitment to service and their noble obligations. We were told that HH&S would be about making America healthy again. And I haven't seen that. I've seen them cut services to give access to children to fresh and healthy foods. I've seen them cut regulations on polluters that make our air quality worse, which hurts people with emphysema, with asthma, with other respiratory diseases. In fact, a lot of the actuarial show more Americans die when polluters are allowed to go back to polluting more. I could go through the things they're doing that are not making our water healthier and safer, not making our air healthier or safer, not making more access to health care that stops and treats chronic disease, not giving access to healthy foods. We're not making America healthy. And so these cuts, they don't surprise me, but they hurt me. They hurt me. These are Americans. These are disproportionately veterans. And I thank you for speaking up for them today.
If the